2010. You're at a bar packed shoulder to shoulder with sweaty strangers. The music is so loud it shakes the walls. Someone just yelled, "Shots, shots, shots!" And like clockwork, the entire bar erupts in chaos. Red Solo cups, cheap vodka, a regrettable text to your ex waiting to be sent. This was peak cool. Drinking wasn't just a thing, it was the thing. If you weren't doing keg stands at a house party or throwing back an Adios MF at a club, what were you even doing with your life? But now, that same bar, half empty. And the shots? Yeah, they're made of ginger and turmeric now. So what happened? Just a decade ago, alcohol was untouchable. A social ritual, a status symbol, a rite of passage. Now, Gen Z is barely drinking. Millennials, the generation that once chugged Four Locos like there was no tomorrow, are cutting back. And for the first time in modern history, alcohol sales are actually declining. Bars are closing, booze brands are scrambling. The words sober curious have gone from a niche movement to a full-blown cultural shift. This isn't just about people drinking less. It's about how an entire generation is rewriting the rules of what it means to have fun, socialize, and even celebrate. So how did the ultimate party drug become cringe? To understand why drinking is dying, we need to go back to when alcohol was king and see what led to its fall. Because this is bigger than just a trend. You know what else made those nights out unforgettable? The music. Every party had a soundtrack, whether it was EDM drops that made you feel euphoria, or that one friend who thought they were a DJ with an aux cord. But like drinking, the way we experience music has changed too. Now, instead of blasting club bangers in a crowded bar, people are curating the perfect playlist for chill nights in. And let's be real, trying to make their own content go viral. But finding the right music, it's a nightmare. Ever tried to upload a video only to have it muted or demonetized because of a copyright claim? Yeah, been there. That's why I use Epidemic Sound. It's a massive library of high-quality, royalty-free music and sound effects that you can use for YouTube, podcasts, social media, whatever you create. No copyright strikes, no takedowns, just hassle-free music. Unlimited downloads with a huge selection, so you always have the perfect track. Professional sound quality, because your content deserves more than generic elevator music. And the best part? You can try it free for 30 days. And if you're tired of copyright drama and boring stock music, do yourself a favor, check out Epidemic Sound. Again, hit the link below for a 30-day free trial. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. To understand why drinking isn't cool anymore, we need to go back to when it wasn't just cool, it was a lifestyle. And no generation embraced it harder than millennials. For decades, alcohol was just alcohol. People drank it, sure, but millennials, they made it their full-blown personality. A generation that was raised on MTV Spring Break, beer pong, and the idea that a drink in your hand made you more interesting. And when they finally reached drinking age, maybe even a little before that, the floodgates opened. By the time millennials hit their 20s, drinking wasn't just expected. It was the main event. Bars were packed, clubs had lines down the street, and if you didn't have a drink in your hand, someone was shoving one at you like an obligation. Alcohol became a personality trait. In brands, they fed the obsession. Millennials didn't just drink, they elevated it. Suddenly, it wasn't just beer, it was craft beer. It wasn't just a cocktail, it was a smoked, rosemary-infused, artisanal $18 statement piece.
I love seeing a sunrise with a cocktail, seeing a sunset with a cocktail, having friends walk into your house with a bottle of wine.
Wine wasn't just wine. It was rosé all day in a pastel pink Instagram post. Breweries became hipster playgrounds. Cocktail bars needed passwords to get in. Liquor companies started naming flavors after desserts because millennials needed everything to be an experience. And the marketing? Absolutely diabolical. Think back to TV in the 2000s. Mad Men made whiskey look like peak masculinity. Sex and the City turned cosmopolitans into a fashion accessory. Jersey Shore, that show was 80% vodka-fueled mayhem and 20% gym tan laundry. Then there was social media. Facebook albums were filled with blurry bar photos. Instagram turned mimosas into morning flexes. Snapchat made sure every party was documented in real time. If you weren't drinking, were you even having fun? Millennials took FOMO to an extreme, and alcohol brands, they profited. By the mid-2010s, drinking wasn't just a choice, it was a requirement. EDM was at its peak. Festivals like Coachella, EDC, Beyond Wonderland. College parties weren't complete without jungle juice in a plastic tub. Boozy brunches became Sunday fun day rituals. Corporate happy hours blurred the line between work and social life. It didn't matter if you were celebrating, networking, or just existing. A drink was involved. And if you weren't drinking, you were being lame or killing the vibe. That's how deeply drinking was wired into millennial culture. And the booze industry knew exactly what they were doing. Grey Goose and Patron became the ultimate I'm successful flex. Four Loko was honestly a war crime disguised as a drink. Celebs launched their own liquor brands. Diddy had Ciroc, Jay-Z had Douce, and later, Kendall Jenner jumped in with 818 tequila. Drinking wasn't just popular, it was everywhere. But was it really just about having a good time? Or was there something else driving it? Because once you take a closer look, you start to realize people weren't drinking just to celebrate. They were drinking to forget. We need to talk about something people don't like to admit. Millennials weren't drinking just for fun. They were drinking because they were drowning. If you were born between 1981 and 1996, your entire life was shaped by crisis after crisis. By the time the oldest millennials were seniors in high school, they watched planes hit the Twin Towers on live TV. The youngest, they were still in diapers, but from that day forward, everything changed. America was at war. News footage was a constant cycle of explosions, troops deployed, grief-stricken families. Even if you weren't on the front lines, you felt it. In the security lines at the airport, in the color-coded terror warnings flashing on TV telling you how scared you were supposed to be that day. And just when millennials were old enough to step out into the real world, the economy collapsed. The 2008 financial crisis hit like a wrecking ball. It was an economic apocalypse for an entire generation. The same generation that was told, go to college, get a degree, and you'll be successful, suddenly found themselves buried in debt. Home ownership, gone. Job stability, gone. The life they were promised, a joke. So, people drank. Not because they wanted to, but because they needed to. Alcohol was cheaper than therapy. Though, let's be real, that's a whole separate issue. Drowning in student loans, happy hour. Laid off from the only entry-level job you could find, tequila. Stress from working 3 side gigs just to afford rent, bottomless mimosas. And it wasn't just money. It was the constant anxiety of being alive. Mass shootings weren't just a rare tragedy anymore. They were a monthly occurrence. The first school shooting millennials remember? Columbine. But it didn't stop there. Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Parkland. The Boston Marathon bombing showed that even running in broad daylight wasn't safe. And even the things that once brought comfort, like the internet, started falling apart. Millennials grew up in the golden age of the internet. AIM, MySpace, Vine, the early days of YouTube, back when things felt real, weird, and actually fun. Then, one by one, they started to disappear, bought out, shut down, corporatized. The internet that felt like home, it was gone. And what replaced it? A nonstop flood of bad news, depressing headlines, and doom scrolling. And if all of that wasn't enough, then came the pandemic. People lost jobs, people lost family members, and the only thing keeping them company? Alcohol sales skyrocketed. It was the one thing you could still have delivered to your door when the world was falling apart. For millennials, drinking wasn't about being cool anymore. It was about survival, a way to forget how much life wasn't working out the way it was supposed to. But then, at some point, the hangovers got worse. The fun nights out started feeling empty. The drinks that were supposed to make life easier just made things harder. And suddenly, people realized something no one ever told them. Alcohol wasn't actually helping. And once that truth hit, there was no going back. It started small. A few people began questioning why they feel like trash every weekend. Then, more people started paying attention to what alcohol was actually doing to their bodies, their minds, their wallets. And then the science came in. The US Surgeon General released a report that directly linked alcohol to cancer. And for the first time, people were looking at their drink like, wait, how did no one tell us this? And that was just the beginning. Most countries require nutrition labels on alcoholic drinks. But in the US, alcohol brands don't have to tell you what's inside. No calorie counts, no ingredient list, no transparency. And in a world where people now obsess over knowing what they put in their body, alcohol started looking sketchy as hell. It's one thing to indulge when you know the risks. It's another when you realize no one ever told you the full story. And then the unthinkable happened. People started quitting drinking, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Mocktails, once a sad option for the designated driver, became a billion-dollar industry. Zero-proof cocktails started showing up on menus at high-end bars. Celebrities who once had their own liquor brands were now proudly saying, "Yeah, I don't drink anymore." Bella Hadid, sober. Adele, sober. Miley Cyrus, sober. Even some rappers who built their brand on pouring up liquor, sober. Suddenly saying, "I don't drink," wasn't weird. It was aspirational. And alcohol companies, they panicked. But it wasn't just about health. It was about money. Because let's be real, drinking is expensive AF. The cost of a night out went from, yeah, it's a little pricey, to this is robbery. $20 cocktails, $12 beers, $100 bar tab, just for yourself. And millennials and Gen Z, they're already struggling financially. At some point, people started doing the math. One night out equals 2 weeks of groceries. 3 bar nights equals a weekend Airbnb getaway. A $15 cocktail equals a $2 seltzer that does the same job minus the regret. And when people started questioning where their money was going, alcohol started looking like a really bad investment. And then, the final nail in the coffin, social media stopped glamorizing drinking. Instead of showing off their drinks, people started posting their regrets. The cringe drunk texts, the embarrassing videos, the hot girl hangover regret posts. And suddenly, the thing that was once a flex looked like a bad decision. This was a crisis for the alcohol industry. For the first time in history, alcohol sales were dropping. Bars and liquor brands were scrambling. Alcohol companies who once spent billions convincing people to drink were now forced to make non-alcoholic versions of their own products just to keep up. Drinking went from the ultimate social ritual to something people were actively walking away from. For a long time, it felt like everyone was a raging alcoholic disguised as a fun time. And for years, I bought into it too, until I didn't. It took blacking out, hitting my head, and getting chronic vertigo to finally snap out of it. And let me tell you, nothing sobers you up faster than feeling like the world is spinning out of control. Literally. Plus, I would get super bad anxiety. That was a moment I realized, why was I doing this to myself? So I started cutting back. I found other ways to unwind. Arnold Palmer's, yoga, meditation. I had to relearn what fun actually meant without alcohol being the main event. I haven't quit completely. I'm not here to preach some holier-than-thou sober lifestyle, but I've given myself rules. Drinking should complement a moment, not be the reason for it. If I have a glass of wine, it's with a meal. If I'm at home, and I'm not the only one. More and more people are realizing that alcohol isn't what makes life interesting. It's not what makes friendships real. It's not what makes memories better. In fact, sometimes it's what makes them worse. So now I want to hear from you. Have you cut back on drinking, or do you still enjoy a cocktail now and then? Do you think alcohol has lost its cool factor, or will it always be a part of social life? And if you ever feel like roasting a millennial for their cringy TikToks, their side part, or their skinny jeans, maybe go easy on them. We've been through a lot, and we're just trying our best. All right, see ya. Time to eat.
Oh my god, I'm gonna be so bad.